Good day, everyone. This is Juanita Kapp from Meticulous Moments, and today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest, and he is Ian McCranor. We are going to have an amazing session. We're going to talk about his book, Fighting with Myself. But before we get into his session, I'm going to play his fabulous Meticulous Moments video.
Go on. Well done.
Sure, no mercy.
Okay.
Well, audience, as you can see, Ian is a man of many talents, and he is here in the green room with me. I'm going to bring him on screen. Welcome, Ian.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you. It's so wonderful to have you here with us. And, it's so amazing that we met online. I believe we met through our good friend Scott Clist.
Yes.
And it's just wonderful how the world is so connected through technology. I mean, I had the privilege of reading your book, and I just absolutely can't wait for this interview. But before we kick off, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Maybe 3 or 4 things that you want the audience to know about you before we start.
About myself. Oh my God, there's so many things. To be honest, every single thing that you probably need to know about me, it's in the book. But that's what it is. It's I've just turned 64 years of age. I turned 64 yesterday. My entire background, I guess, has been basically learning how to cope with situations that I guess that every person in the world has to deal with. But it's one of those things that you, at the time, you think it's only you dealing with it. It doesn't occur to you that everybody's going through the same thing. I grew up in Coventry, in England, a very working class environment, and I was surrounded by, I guess, a lot of violence, and a lot of people get involved in that, and they don't realise how to handle it. And as a shy kid, as a quiet kid, I thought the best way to deal with that would be to hide from it, and which I did as a kid. I hid from it. I ran from it. I got this notion that if you were to hide and you were to lie and to cheat, then that's how you got by. And I soon realized that isn't how it works. Just being honest, being upfront, telling people the truth is the only way to be. And as a young adult, I was scared to go into pubs. I was scared to talk to people. I was that person, actually, to really know who I am. I was that person as a young teenager who would get on a bus and I'd put my head down. I wouldn't make eye contact with anybody. I wouldn't talk to anybody because I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I got anything important to say to anybody. And I was embarrassed that I'd make a fool of myself. And I guess one of the biggest lessons I ever learned was when I decided to walk into a supermarket, into a big store, and to purposely, absolutely on purpose, go up to an assistant and ask them where something was, even if I knew where it was, because I knew if I could do that, I would start a conversation. And it didn't matter to me what they thought of me. I wanted to just see what happened. I remember the first time I did it as a teenager, I was terrified. Just to go, I mean, it sounds silly, doesn't it? To anybody who is confident already, to walk into a normal supermarket and just talk to an assistant and ask a question was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
But I made myself do it. And surprisingly, they would say, oh, well, let me show you where it is. And they'd start a conversation with me. So then I started getting more excited about, I'll do that again. I'll do that again. Yeah. Now I'll do it with a stranger on the bus. Just start a conversation. And I built a lot of my confidence by confronting the things I was scared of. And the book is a lot about that. If that makes any sense. I mean, some people will think, well, that sounds crazy. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there too that go, I actually get that. I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ian, I can relate to that because just to add in, welcome to Philip Maudsley and Edward Bishop joining us. Thank you guys for being here. To get back to, being shy and not wanting to be out there, I can actually relate to that, believe it or not, because my mom was very shy. And when I was young, I thought that's the way we should be. We should be shy, but that wasn't me. And in the first years of my life, she tried to, protect me and put me in this little glass cage because she was shy. She wasn't outgoing. And then one day we just had this discussion, and I just realized that that wasn't me, and it was okay. And since that day, she actually supported me, because I've always been loud and talkative, and I laugh, and I'm adventurous, and it was such a wonderful feeling being able to have that discussion with her and to understand that it's okay that I'm different. I'm not the same as she is. I love her. She's amazing the way she is, or was. She passed away, but we can be us. We can be ourselves, and we can break through those barriers that have us
Right.
in all the time. Now, you have a fabulous book. I mean, it was such a great read. I felt like I told you earlier today on Messenger, I felt like I was sitting with you at a campfire and you were telling me your life story. So I actually went and I drafted up questions from each chapter, because there were things that I didn't want to miss. So I'm going to go
Okay.
through the chapters with you. And I read the book, and I encourage the audience to read the book, and we'll talk about how they can get a hold of your book. But let's go through the chapters and give them a little bit of information on the topics that you chose as your topics, as the things that you really wanted to bring to the audience. You were a bouncer,
Right.
and the violence that accompanies the task to keep the peace in the bar. Tell us a little bit more about what type of fights break out and why, and how did the bouncers work together? Did you guys become friends? How was the dynamic there?
Okay. As you're reading the book, it's so far outside of my personality. Being a bouncer isn't something I never ever thought I would do. That isn't something that is part of me. Being a bouncer in the UK, anyway, I'm sure it's pretty similar all over the world. But being a bouncer back in the 80s, you were fighting with a lot of people. Now, it's important to describe to people what fighting is, and the best way to describe that is that a fight, when you hear the word fight or we think about fighting, it's two people engaging in combat, whatever that means. But what is the ultimate goal? In a fight, what's the goal? What is it you're trying to achieve? Because as a young child, when I saw or got involved, reluctantly, obviously, with any kind of confrontation or altercation, it terrified me. And I didn't really understand what I was scared of. It's just the adrenaline that hits, the fight or flight hits, and you're scared, but you can't really articulate why you're scared or what you're scared of. So I decided after, again, it's in the book, after a few altercations, I decided the way for me to gain confidence is to do what I saw the confident kids doing. They were good fighters. So I thought I'll get involved in learn how to fight. Now, as a non-fighter, somebody who wasn't interested in that kind of thing, really, I'd seen Bruce Lee on the movies, and I went, if I could do that, imagine how respected I would be, the ignorance of a teenager. Yeah. So I got involved in martial art, boxing, and then karate. And I actually became very good as a competitive athlete, but in a combat sport, fighting. A guy came to the club who was a bouncer, involved in violence pretty much every night of the week. Good fighter, good boxer. He was a former taekwondo exponent, very tough, powerful man. And I had a sparring session with him, and I actually took him apart. And at the end of the fight, he went, have you ever thought about working the door, being a bouncer? And I knew that I was scared of confrontations, because competitive fighting is not the same. Doesn't matter whether it's cage fighting, MMA, doesn't matter what it is. It's not the same as outside. And I didn't realize that. But he said, no, I'll take care of you. You'll be fine. Come and work with me. So I went to work this one night with him, and the place erupted. It kicked off. People were being glassed in the face. People were getting tables thrown at them. I watched the bouncers. I thought they killed somebody. They kicked him all around the room, and I quit that night. And it wasn't the same as what happens in a karate club. Now, the best way I can describe that, and to answer your question about what bouncers do, the way they do it, is let me ask you a personal question.
Yes.
How old are you? You shouldn't ask the lady her age, but how old are you?
I'm 42.
42. Okay. So for 40, this when I got this was a massive lesson.
Yeah.
So for 41 years you've been walking. If you started walking at age 1, you've taken single steps 41 years. So how many million, billion single steps have you taken? You've lost count. So you are effectively a one-step expert. If I asked you to stand up and take a step, you could do it, correct? Anywhere. So you stand up, you take a step. I say, okay, go outside, stand up, take a step. Physically, you can take a step. I then ask you to stand on the highest diving board or a cliff edge where they do high diving. It's a long way down. Stand on the edge and do that one single step that you've done billions of times. You're a one-step expert. Why can't you do it? And you'll stand there and you go to take a step and you shout down to people, has anybody been killed doing this? No. Okay. Can I have frogmen down there? Can I have boats down there? Can I have first aid down there? Take care of me. Yep, it's all there for you. Take a step. So that step that you're fantastic at, that you're an expert at, you can't do. It's mental, it's not physical. So if I was to get you in a karate club or a boxing club and I was asking you to throw a punch, a knockout punch, to destroy somebody, it doesn't matter who it was, they would destroy them. And you did it a billion times, the same way you're doing a billion steps. In the club, you can do it. Now you're standing in front of somebody who is like a guy, a monster who's going to kill you. Taking that single punch with the goal of knocking him out, which you could learn to do very easily. That single punch is now impossible to do. You can't. It's hard to pull the trigger. You can't do it. And I had to separate and realize it didn't matter how good a fighter I became. Yeah, it didn't matter. I had to become very, very, very good at being brutally violent. Yes. Not good at fighting. I had to become very good at being brutally violent for 2 or 3 seconds. And if it wasn't over in 2 or 3 seconds, I was in trouble. But even if it was over, here's the difference. Even if it was over, the question I ask people in karate clubs or martial art clubs, that punch you're talking about throwing, what's your objective? What do you want to happen after you throw the punch? And if they say, I want to knock the person unconscious, say, okay. So you've knocked them unconscious, but you've killed them. What now? Or you've hit them and nothing happened. What now? Or you've hit them and broke their nose, cracked their skull, but they're still there. And they're going to come around your house in the morning with their friends, with weapons. Yeah. They're going to attack your family. You don't get that in a karate club. The things that happen when you get involved in violence is nothing to do with fighting, and it's everything to do with just violence. And that violence spills over into tomorrow and the next day and the next month and the next year, and it potentially can never go away. So learning to fight doesn't keep you safe. People skills keep you safe. Being able to have a conversation with somebody and walking away from a fight keeps you safe. But the second you get involved in a fight, you have to realize the consequences of your action can last forever. The consequences of inaction can last forever. So I say to the bouncers that I got involved with, weren't going to stand there and get involved in a fight. They would read a situation. They would try and talk the people out of what's going on. They would know ahead of time if it's going to get violent, but they wouldn't wait for it to get violent. They would destroy these people. I mean, really hurt them. And when it was over and done with, they would then go to sometimes, and not every time, depending on who the people were, if they were named fighters, they were locals who people knew, they would then go to their house the next morning, knock the door and say, this situation we had last night, is it over? If it isn't over, we're here again. But the violence involved was just ridiculous, just tremendous.
Yeah. That's an impeccable answer, you know, Ian. I was thinking as you were explaining this, and it's true, it's real. Fights in the dojo are not at all the same as fights on the street. Not even the MMA, because there's still rules, right? There's still people
Correct.
governing the rules of the MMA fight. Yes, you get hurt. Yes, there is a certain amount of violence involved, but it's not the same as on the street, because in the street or in a club or somewhere, there's no rules, and that's very dangerous.
Right.
Living in a country that's very violent, living in a very, very crime-driven country here in South Africa, we are taught, with regards to the self-defense, we are taught to fight in the dojo. Sometimes we fight tournament, kumite or karate. Sometimes we fight MMA. But we are taught during our self-defense seminars and classes that we have to be able to switch. If you are out there in the street, or if you are out there in the bush, if you are on the highway, and you are presented with an instance where someone really wants to take your life or really wants to bring you harm, you have to be able to switch. And we have to be able to become violent in that second, because it's right what you're saying. It's 2 or 3 seconds. Obviously, first you try to calm the person or people down. But if they don't listen and they still proceed, of course, we have to be able to make that mental switch, do what needs to be done, and get out of there in order to save ourselves or our children. Now, you had someone bullying you, and I wrote down his name because a lot of the martial artists that I know and that are in my Meticulous Martial Arts Mastermind Karate group, martial arts group, they were also bullied. And I found it very interesting that you wrote about Rick that had a Glaswegian, I hope I pronounced it correctly. He had a Glaswegian accent, and he often bullied you. Tell us more about Rick and how you worked through that situation as a child, because many of us went through that, but we don't all handle it the same way. How did that go? How did you work through it?
Living in the area, like you say, you live in a violent or a country that's got its fair share of violence. I grew up in Willenhall. Willenhall is, as I said, a very working class environment. The vast majority of the people who lived there were great, but there were families there were some violent families there. They'd moved down from different parts of the country, and the families were violent, not just the kids. You know, the dads were in and out of prison. They were violent families. They grew up with violence. And I grew up in a family that wasn't violent. So to me, it was all alien. And I couldn't understand how these people were okay doing what they were doing. And the stories in the book about Rick's not his real name, but they're a family from Scotland. And a Glaswegian, if you people who know Glasgow, the accent is a scary accent when they talk to you. They sound scary even when they're being nice. And I'm standing at the bus stop. I'm only 12 years of age. And I see this lad, called him Rick, and I knew who he was. And he walked over the road and he walked up to me and he demanded some money, and he pulled a knife out and he put the knife at my throat. Oh. Now, I was scared, but I was 12 years of age. I was ignorant. I didn't really, the gravity of how dangerous it was hadn't really occurred to me, although it was scary. And I gave him everything. I gave him it all, gave him my money, and he just ran. he just ran away with all the money, and it wasn't very much, but he only demanded like a little bit. Just give me, like, it was 10 pence actually at the time. Give me, just, I don't know what 10 pence is worth in South Africa, but it's nothing. And he ran away. And at that age, it's like a turning point for me. At 12 years of age, I was thinking, how can I deal with that? What do I need to be able to do for that not to happen? And I found myself walking around the streets I'd go out to go somewhere, and I'd check out the window first of all to make sure there were no bullies around. I couldn't just go out the door and go somewhere without being scared. And there came a point where I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just not putting up with this anymore. And I started to create, through visualization, I started to create and realized that I could create a separate personality to do different tasks. Separate alter egos, I realized as I got older and spoke to more people as well, and realized they kind of did the same but didn't know they were doing it. There were alter egos, and there are alter egos in all of us. We've all got something that if we can waken it up and we can teach it, we can become pretty much anything we want to be. I mean, doing this right now, this isn't a comfortable environment for me. Standing, talking, knowing that you're being videoed and people are going to see it. It's not comfortable for me, but you end up saying, okay, if I want to promote myself, if I want to be out there and show people I've written this book or publicize myself, you can't hide away. You've got to do what you've got to do. So you decide, okay, I will do this for this amount of time and then go back to who I really am. So the Rick situation got me really starting to work on creating different personalities, and long time before the internet, long time before you could research this kind of stuff, I started to work on visualization techniques of my own. And I'd visualize, people do it all the time, but they don't realize they're doing it. I'd lie on the bed and I'd picture myself on a big movie screen beating up the bullies. And I created a perception of myself behaving a certain way. And the more I thought about it and the more I talked about it, the more I verbalized it, I kind of manifested that thing that it kind of happened. So I got this other personality, and it sounds strange to talk about it, but I got this personality who walked side by side with me. And eventually it kind of molded into me. And I realized that when people speak to you or when people approach you, you teach them. You teach everybody how to treat you. You tell people what they can get away with. You tell people it's okay to be rude to me. It's okay to bully me. And I then had another incident at school where somebody did try and bully me, did ask me to meet him for a fight. And his normal answer when he did that to people was they said no, they were scared. And I was skinny, I was pale, a freckled face, or red hair. And he just walked up to me and said, I'll see you in the toilets for a fight. And he just laughed with his mates and walked away. And I said, yeah, go on then. All right then, I'll see you. And I was kind of strangely excited because I was going to do something about this now. Yes. But it wasn't me that said yes. It wasn't me that said okay. This other personality I've been working on said, hey, Ian, I'll take care of this for you. I'll do this for you. And it's like somebody else did it. And as I got older, I started to create these different personalities, these different personas. Every time I had to deal with something I was uncomfortable with. And so many people don't realize every single person's got that ability inside of them. If only they realized it, it would be life-changing for them.
Yeah, I actually did a Zoom meeting in one of the groups that I started earlier this year, and we talked about sub-personas. You are the person, you are yourself, but when you go into a certain situation, your sub-persona takes over. And I used the following illustration, and this is all proved by science, like you said. This is normal for every single person. Talking to the actors out there now, Phil Maudsley is an actor. Talking to the martial artist out there, Edward Bishop said, yes, no rules on the street, but he's a martial artist. So I used the following example. I said sub-personas are as follows. I'm a pastor, or I was a pastor for 15 years, but I'm also a martial artist, but I'm also a public speaker. I'm not going to preach a sermon the way I would conduct a speaking event when I fly to the States, because when I'm doing a speaking event, I'm in my sub-persona, which is not a bad thing because I'm teaching corporate now. I'm not a pastor in the dojo. When I walk into the dojo, I am the lioness, that's my nickname, and there I am to fight. I'm there to train. I'm there to better myself. So that's the roles, to explain it in normal terms, that we fulfill. A mom is to her children. She is the homemaker. She's the provider in some cases. She's the cook. She's the doctor. She's the psychiatrist at some point. She's the encourager. She's the biggest cheerleader. That's what a sub-persona is. So I find it so amazing that you laid that out in your book, because as I read the pages, I thought to myself, yes, this is a wonderful explanation of how we have the ability as humans to adapt to our circumstances and to get the things done while still self-preserving, while still being sure that we take care of ourselves. So I found that very interesting. And you mentioned in your one chapter that you're a fan of Only Fools and Horses, and you also spoke about the sub-persona. So I would really encourage, and we're going to tell the audience at the end of the session how they can get a hold of your book, because it's a must read. Now, I want to ask you to explain to the audience a little bit about a special memory that you have about a magnifying glass.
Magnifying glass.
Yes.
Okay, that's right. My older, I got three brothers. I got a twin brother, and I got two older brothers. And I guess I was about 7, 8 years of age, and sitting outside, the sun shining. I'm sitting talking to my older brother, and he's fixing his bike, the bike tire, and he picks up a magnifying glass and he points it at an ant, and the ant starts to burn. And he said, "Here, give that a go." I'm only a kid. I think, yeah, looks like fun. You didn't realise how cruel it was at the time.
Yeah.
So I picked the magnifying glass up, and I got the sun going through and the beams hitting the ant. And I thought, oh, I'll burn his tire with it. And I watched it start to smoulder, and it was taking a long time. So I thought, I'll go back to the ants again. So I start burning the ants, and my mother comes out and sees what I'm doing. And she tells me that, did I realise that the ants, if they found out I was doing that, would all gang up on me, and they'd attack me one day. And of course, I was terrified. So of course, she also told me that I shouldn't go down by the river, because, and this is why I was scared as a kid. My mother, to keep me safe, basically just scared me. Which is a good thing, I guess, but it's also a bad thing. I had to realize that it wasn't that I was scared, it's just that I didn't understand how to deal with fear. So she also told me that I shouldn't go down the river, because there were a lot of monsters down there, and she described them as pancakes that would sit on the side of the river and would turn into this thing called vords. And when we say perception's reality, my twin brother actually said he saw one. Of course, they don't exist, but he said he saw one on the side of the river. This pancake that turned into a vord, that she called them, these monsters, and they drag you and pull you into the river. And so my parents, mother in particular, made me so scared of the world that you obviously read the story about Mickey Burp as well. The guy who broke his arm burping.
Yeah.
She told me that a friend, my older brother's friend, was he burped really, really, really loud all the time, and he'd come in the house and just let out a great big burp. And my mother used to say, you shouldn't be doing that. That's rude. You shouldn't be doing that. But he just kept doing it. He's only a teenager, and he broke his arm one day. I think he probably fell over or something, broke his arm. And she told me that he broke his arm burping too loud. So I was terrified of the world. I was scared of the world. I ran from everything. And so that's kind of where I guess my insecurity started. Your parents think they're helping you, and they are. But they inadvertently are making you, they're not teaching you how to become confident. And that was my problem. The only thing I was looking for my entire life.
Yeah.
I thought I had to learn how to fight. And I didn't. I absolutely didn't at all. But it was my way of finding confidence. And the only thing I ever wanted was to learn how to be confident. And if you could put confidence in a bottle and give it to somebody, the world would change. There's so many people who are struggling, and they're struggling because they're not confident at all. They lack confidence.
True, absolutely true. I agree with you. Our parents try to protect us through these measures, but they really are. I guess in those days, Ian, they thought they were doing the right thing. I mean, my mom also, she did the same thing. I guess they tried to protect us. Thank God we went through the situations that we went through, especially you, and you learned that confidence is attainable, that you have all these gifts and talents. And I want to touch on that as well as we go through this session. And, you talked about sliding doors. Yeah. And you talked about the film with Gwyneth Paltrow, and that really spoke to me. I'll tell you why. I was in a live earlier this week in a leadership group. I'm building out that community with them. And the question posed to all the attendees was, what are you grateful for? And the first thing that popped in my mind, and the audience will understand now when Ian talks about it, why I mentioned this, is my answer in my mind. The first thing that popped up was, I'm grateful for life's little interruptions, the little choices that I make due to circumstances that help me to be connected to the right people, that help me on my path, my life, making the choices. Just a little interruption or a little change can bring you to a place where you either have a crossroad, you have two paths, and just that little step that you make, like you mentioned the step earlier as well, can put you in a whole other perspective. Let's talk about a little bit about that chapter on Gwyneth Paltrow, Sliding Doors.
Sliding Doors, I wrote that because I was having a conversation. The way I wrote the book, actually, was, which will come to that, I guess, that's in the book as well, how I wrote it. Because I'm not a writer by any stretch of the imagination, but people read it and they go, well, it seems to me like you really are. But it came, that chapter came about because I was having conversations with people. I was running on the treadmill. I was lifting weights, we were training, and there were people who were meeting us at the gym who were arriving late, or they couldn't get there for whatever reason, and they would say to me, "Oh, sorry, I've let you down," and I would say to them, "I've never ever said to any of them, you didn't let me down. No, I'll say to them rather, you've never let me down. You did what you had to do. And the reason, if you were late or something happened, it happened to push you down under the path.
Yeah.
So the reason you didn't turn up yesterday to work out was because there was something more important you had to do. There's something more.
Yes.
You don't realize it yet. You don't know yet. It will become evident, or maybe it won't become evident. Maybe it's because you had to meet somebody who has to be in your life because you can't continue doing what you're doing the way you're doing it. So you're being pushed. You're being pushed. So whenever, like today, I was late, potentially late for doing this because I couldn't find a cable that I needed to use for a camera, and I had it already. I had everything ready, and I thought, I'm a big believer in failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So I got everything prepared, and for some reason, this cable wasn't there. I don't know where it is for this camera to work. So rather than get too stressed out about it, I couldn't find it. Do I know why I couldn't find it? No, it'll become evident why I couldn't find it. But sliding doors is about the things that happen to you. And for those who are not familiar with the movie is about starring Gwyneth Paltrow. It starts off with her heading to the tube station, says goodbye to her husband, goes off to the tube station, and I think she stops for a coffee or gets talking to somebody, something like that. But she ends up getting to the tube station a split second too late, and the doors slide and they close, and the train goes off, and she's going to a meeting, and now she's not going to make it. It's pointless. There's no point going to work. So she heads home, and when she gets home, her husband's with another woman, and her life changes because of her catching him with this other woman.
Yeah.
But then the movie starts again, and she makes the train, and she gets to her meeting. She comes home, and everything's fine. And now these two worlds, these two stories play out when she didn't get on the train, when she did get on the train.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of conversations I was having at the gym, and I explained to somebody that I'd had a chance for selection for the European Championships. And I'd got on a train in Coventry, and it was running late. And by the time I got down to Crystal Palace in London for the squad training, I was a few hours late, even though the selection hadn't started for the fight-offs for the team to go away. Because I was late, I was told, you're not going to be allowed to try out. You can't fight for selection because you were late. And as a man in his early 20s, my argument is it wasn't my fault.
Yes.
It wasn't my fault. It was a train's fault. And the coach said, no, if we went to Vienna for the European Championships, would you leave today? No, of course you wouldn't. You'd leave a few days ahead of time, get acclimated, get settled in, and be at the venue ahead of time, ready to go. Of course you would. And so he said, no, you can't try out. And he said, you should have been here first. Most of these people on the squad actually were from that area, from London at the time. And my argument was, well, I live further away. And he said, because you live further away, it's not my fault to live further away. What you should have done was be here a day early. Should have got a hotel. Should have had a taxi booked. You should have been here first because of your situation. You should prepare for those eventualities. And in my early 20s, I thought he was wrong. And then it hit me. He was right. I'm in control. It's down to me to make the preparations. It's down to me to get it right. I still mess up. I still do things wrong. I still don't plan properly sometimes. But for the most part, it's things like that that make you realize that, yeah, you are in control. And the bad things, the me missing the train, me not being allowed to go for selection, made me look at the world differently. If I'd been selected and gone away and competed, I'd been away for a week. My life would have completely, totally changed, because all the people that I wouldn't have met or I wouldn't have spoke to would have made my life change. All the people I would have met or spoke to would have changed my life. So the people you come in contact with every day, whether it's good, whether it's bad, there's a purpose there. And there's another movie, isn't it? What's it called? Butterfly Effect.
Oh,
If a butterfly lands in a tree, that everything changes.
Oh.
It all changes. So things like that had me questioning what I was doing. And many, many years later, working as a bouncer, I'm hitting people with the intention. There's only one intention for the era that I worked as a bouncer. There's only one intention, and that is to take away the threat as fast as possible, because you don't know who that person is, what they've got. They could pull a knife on you. They got threat. You don't know. All the bouncers of my era, they had one intention, and that was have the person unconscious as fast as possible. I got very, very good at doing that. But then people weren't waking up very quickly. Sometimes I laid there for 10, 15 minutes. And then you think, what if now that he has woke up, you start hearing about brain bleeds and concussions that they died 10 hours later in hospital.
Yeah.
You saw them get up and walk away, then they collapsed again. And I started being very worried about hitting people then, because the consequences, again, of my actions and the consequences of my inactions, they're both consequences. And I realized I've been so lucky. I was a good competitive fighter. I was a good athlete, but I wasn't a violent person. My alter ego knew how to be violent to deal with a threat, but then the empathy that I have would go home and cry after I'd done it.
Yeah.
So I was very, very violent for split seconds, 2-3 seconds at a time, and then I beat myself up and fight with myself for days, not just because of what might happen to me. I've just hurt somebody's child.
Yes.
I've just hurt somebody. I had no choice. It was me or him, but I've still done it. Is there a way I can not do that? Yeah, don't do the job, because you can't do that job. You can't hit somebody and hurt somebody nicely. So I thought, right, I'm leaving this job to the people who are okay with it, because I wasn't okay with it. I was never okay with it. I dealt with it, but I was never okay with it.
Yeah. And you know what you say, and I agree with you 100%. You never know what the after effects are. That's why, as martial artists, and most of the martial artists I know, they're not violent. We walk away from that fight. It's the best thing to do.
Right.
And, not even just knocking someone unconscious, but even choking someone, you never know what happens inside that person's body. How strong are their veins?
Right.
It could start a blood clot. They could have a serious number of things, health issues after that. So always choose the path of peace. And of course, if you're in a situation where it's life or death, you know what to do. Now, there's so many things I want to encourage the audience. I mean, I'm going to ask one last question, but I want to tell the audience there are so many amazing chapters in Ian's book. There's a chapter where he describes the 3 waves of adrenaline. I'm putting it out there just to entice you to purchase the book and to read it. You will absolutely enjoyed. But the last question I want to end with is a quote from your book. And you said the following, and then we're going to talk about how they can purchase your book. You said, let me just find it. Here we go. You said, I'm just going there. As I reflect on the many places, and that's, I'm quoting you, that I have visited, the people I've met, and the adventures I've had, one thing sticks out as true. Everyone is in their own battle. Please tell us more about that.
In their own, I didn't hear what you said, in their own
Battle.
battle.
Yes.
Yes, they are. Every single person that you talk to is wearing a mask of some degree, for whatever reason. And we do not know what people are going through. We've got absolutely no idea what they're going through. We just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody just comes up to you and just tells you, hey, I've got this going on, I've got that going on. Everyone's fighting their own battle. The only way you're ever going to win that battle is to not lie to yourself.
Yeah.
I remember the day, you know, George Michael is a famous singer.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I remember the day that he came out as being gay. I remember sitting watching him thinking, what kind of sad world do we live in where he has had to pretend his entire pretty much adult life at that point about his sexuality? Why do people, nobody cares. Nobody really cares, do they? Let's face it, nobody cares. Why are people interested in other people's personal lives? We shouldn't care about their personal lives. Nothing to do with us. So he was fighting that battle. And when he came out and said, this is who I am, he was amazed. He was shocked that he realized people don't get, you'll always get people who hate. You'll always get people who want to say bad things for whatever reason. But every single person is fighting their own battle. It could be with drugs. It could be with alcohol. It could be food addiction. It could be confidence, lack of confidence. The list is endless. And if people can recognize, again, a big lesson is that when you realize nobody cares. If we're doing this podcast right now, and if I said, I don't want to do a podcast because somebody may think so and so, or what if the impression of me is this, or they don't, people don't like me, that's fine. Because the truth is, when it's over, people move on and get on with their lives. They got their mortgage, they got their cars, they got their relationships, they got their job. They've got so many things going in their lives. They're not thinking about me. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about anything but themselves, because they've got to survive. So, and they've got their own battle they're fighting with. They don't care about my battle. They care about their own battle. So, yeah, there isn't a person, you will not meet a person on the planet, you just won't, who isn't dealing with something that they're fighting with.
I'm so sorry, Ian. I lost connection. It just went poop. Please
I saw that,
continue.
yeah.
Yeah, you said we are doing this live podcast, and for some reason you said that's the last part I heard, and then everything just went off.
I don't know where did you lose me?
You said we are live on this podcast, and if you were to say something, we were talking about George Michael and the
Yeah,
fact that he talked about his preferences and how
yeah,
nobody cared. And then you continued to say, if we are live on this platform, yeah, it's the South
yeah,
African internet age.
yeah.
And if you were
Okay.
to say, and then I went off. So please continue there. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. What I was saying was that I've been invited to talk to you on this podcast, and
Yes.
there would have been a point in my life, obviously a good many years ago now, that I'd have probably refused because I was worried about how I may come across, or I don't want to put myself out there. And
Yeah.
like I said, I was shy and quiet. But the truth is, nobody cares. The truth is, every single person has got their battle they're fighting with, whether it's drugs, alcohol, their sexuality, whatever it is. They've all got something. And the one thing I think that I talk to people about, when the conversation arises, is that, well, why do you care what somebody thinks? Nobody cares. Nobody is bothered about you. Nobody's thinking about me right now. Of course, some people are. Nobody's really thinking about you. Yes, of course, some people are.
Yeah.
But in the general scheme of things, people are thinking about themselves. And if somebody sees me on the podcast and I'm worried that somebody won't like me, or they'll think I said this wrong, or whatever it is, it will pass, because people move on. They're not thinking about this podcast every day for the rest of their lives. Within 5 minutes of watching it, they've either enjoyed it or they haven't, but they've moved on. And there's far too much emphasis put on, well, that person is thinking about this, or that person cares about this. They don't. They're not interested. They're interested in their own life. Their life is far too busy to care about what I'm doing. They're not interested. And when you realize that, you not take risks, but you can go out and do things and not be scared of failing, not be scared of looking a fool, because Wayne Gretzky said it the best: you miss 100% of the shots you never take.
That's it. It's my favorite quote, by the way.
Yeah.
Ian, you're a phenomenal guest here at the Meticulous Moments podcast. And you know why I loved our session so much? Because you keep it real. And that's
Right.
one of our hashtags here at Meticulous. One of our hashtags is keeping it real. So thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for sharing your authentic life story. Your book is impeccable. It's a must read. And before we close the session, please just tell the audience how they can acquire a copy of your book. We are so blessed to have had you here today. Thank you so much for making the time for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity. There's various ways, I guess. There it is, paperback. You can get the paperback, or you can get the ebook. Now, most people are either getting it from like Apple Books. They can download it from Apple on their phone, or they can order it from their favorite bookstore. It's all over the world now. But most people are just going to Amazon, and they're just searching for the name and ordering it. Again, they can download it to their Kindle or to whatever. Is it Nook Apple uses? They can download it, read it on their phone, or they can order it through Amazon paperback.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ian. We had a fabulous time. You know, we had people commenting here. I just want to read some of the comments here. Donna Cancela Keating is on with us as well. She says hi. Edward, he loves the movies that we talked about. And Phil Maudsley said, Ian, you're awesome. Love this live. So thank you to everyone that supported. Thank you, Ian. You're a phenomenal guest. And I'll reach out to you on Messenger as well. We'll keep contact. And just keep on shining, because when I see you, I just see someone that's victorious, someone that's, you know, not afraid to take chances, a risk taker, and someone that has the courage to face what life presents each and every single day that we
That's
go
what
through.
it's all
So
about.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.